Joining us today for bonus conversations on the coast is Mary OHaraDevereaux. And she has written a book with a very interesting title, Navigating the Badlands, Thriving in the Decade of Radical Transformation. It's a book published by Josie Bass, and I guess the simplest way to describe it is that it's a book about the future, and a very complex, comprehensive look at the future. And it's laid out in an interesting metaphor. How's that for words that probably don't mean too much? What's your version, short version of description of the book? Because it is complex.
Well, probably the best way to think about the book, it really is my forecast of the next 20 years. Mm-hmm. And the big frame for the book is that we're in a big historical cycle of disruptive innovation that we have not seen the likes of since the Middle Ages 1,000 years ago.
Wow.
And that the Badlands is actually a transition zone between eras, at the ending of the great industrial plains and until we reach the far foothills of the future. And like any transition zone, it's rough traveling, and that's where the Badlands came from, where almost everything that you tried to do before doesn't work out to help you navigate this next 10 to 15 years before we get to the other side.
So you're saying that we're in the Badlands now.
We're in the Badlands now. We're just at the beginning. This is about a 75-year cycle of historic disruption, and we're about 50 years into it. So we got 25 years to go. So you might as well get adjusted to all this change and challenge and
disruption.
And disruption, because there's going to be lots more of it.
Wow. Annalee Saxenian.
Yes.
Is the Dean of the School of Information and Management Systems at UC Berkeley. And she says that this book will change the way you think about the future. Mary OHaraDevereaux's insights are both sobering and empowering, a must-read for citizens of the 21st century. The parts that I read of the book were more sobering than empowering.
Well, I'm very optimistic about the future. And I think what Annalee was really referring to is that at the end of these big cycles, everything gets transformed because there's such a huge structural shift in the economy. Because of globalization, we don't really know what globalization is. We're going to spend 50 years figuring it out. So everything gets turned upside down. The kinds of jobs we have, the kind of companies we have, who's most competitive. And the big challenge right now is, at this point, all the social institutions start to fail. So if you just look around you and everybody is experiencing it, the healthcare system's failing, the education system's failing, criminal justice. And so just everything that people hang on to kind of keep oriented in daily life is going away. And we have to reinvent the new. So that's why it's sobering, but yet empowering. How many groups of human beings get to totally reinvent their future? At the end of the Middle Ages, what we had was a renaissance. So we actually have the opportunity as a human species today to have another renaissance. Now, I think that's exciting.
And that's empowering. That's
empowering.
Now, the other thing that you've done for us is that you have made some thoughts that are a little closer in, some predictions is the word I was looking for things that would be happening in 2005. And one of them is about women. You say that they're going to choose small and medium-sized business as their preferred work choice, but at an accelerated pace. And you make the suggestion that acceleration is going to be fueled by younger women who will be, going down the same path as baby boomer women.
Well, that's right. Actually, everybody always talks about aging as the big demographic trend. Yeah. But really, the most impacting trend today is the changing identity of women. And that's a trend that started in about 1950 after World War II, and we have never had so many educated, experienced, sophisticated women who've been cutting their path through the workplace. And boomer women, when they first entered the workforce, all the choices were really big hierarchical corporations, which they're now rejecting in their 50s and 60s as a workplace. Mm-hmm. But younger women coming into the workforce today have ample opportunities in the new economic engine of growth, small and medium-sized businesses, and they're just going to go in that direction rather than into the big companies in the future. Now, that's big news.
That is big news. Why do you think they'll be making that choice?
Because
to get out of the big corps and get into something small and original.
Because I think it fits more with their choices and lifestyle, and they can do better.
Okay. Mary OHaraDevereaux is going to be back with us next week on Bonus Conversations on the Coast, and we're going to get her to talk about things international. You won't want to miss it.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Follow us on Twitter at JimFosterCoc or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
Joining us again this week for Bonus Conversations on the Coast, Mary OHaraDevereaux, author of Navigating the Badlands, Thriving in the Decade of Radical Transformation, a book published by Josie Bass. And Miss OHaraDevereaux is doing us the wonderful favor of making accessible some theories which this mind found very complex and sometimes impenetrable. It wasn't impenetrable, this book, to Lydia Beebe, Corporate Secretary of Chevron Texaco, to which I send a check every month, I want you to know. Navigating the Badlands offers a thought-provoking exploration into the upheaval occurring in business and society. That's that Badlands phase that we're in, a phase of upheaval.
That's it.
Yep. Those leaders wanting to thrive through this transformation will welcome the opportunity to challenge their thinking and broaden their perspective in new, fresh ways. Leaders wanting to positively impact our new global society will embrace the Badlands message and insights on the criticality is a new word. That must be from the university. Message and insights on the criticality of ethical leadership. Thank you very much, Lydia, but you didn't need to give us that criticality. Coming back to what we promised the folks, that we would look at some of your areas of prediction for 2005 in the international sphere. And one of the areas that you look at for 2005 is China. And it has a wonderful heading in the notes on this. It says, China keeps shopping. What are they out there shopping for? I mean, they just bought the IBM's PC division.
Well, China's actually, one of the chapters in my book is called Learn About China.
Okay.
Because I think that's one of the big imperatives at this point in history and in the Badlands, that China really is a rising economic and political power around the world. And all of us need to learn about China and learn about the culture of China, learn about how the economy is changing, and learn about how we're going to partner with China in the future. Because China will be, in about 20, 25 years, another major superpower on the political and economic lines. So it's an imperative.
One of the things about China we have to dump, I think, is the stereotype that it's a huge country with a fantastically humongous population, and they need to be fed. And isn't that too bad that that's that country? I mean, that it doesn't have the potential that it has, that it's, exercising right now. Or
Well, there's just lots of myths about China, and we in the United States really do need to learn about China. China has certainly some poor people, and we certainly have poor people. We probably have about the same percentage of really poor people in the United States that they have in China, somewhere around 25% or so. So in a sense, we're beginning to get a similar profile. China has more middle class Chinese right now than we have population in the United States. So they have over 300 million people in their middle class. So China's really changing. most of China has a market economy. Most people don't know that communism really is not a feature of their economy anymore.
Wow. That's wonderful to know.
It's great to know. I mean, it's a wonderful opportunity to see. There's an opportunity for another 1.2 billion people to be lifted out of poverty, and that's good for everybody around the globe.
And that's why people like Chevron Texaco are interested.
Well, absolutely. I mean, China's a raging economy with lots of opportunities for both large and small businesses.
Europe, you say, will continue to struggle. And the struggle is, I guess, over the structure and the political function of the new, alliance.
Well, that's some of it. Europe's trying to bring together and merge into the European Union a lot of the Eastern European countries and countries like Europe. So that's that's trying to bring together many different kinds of cultures and many different economies and different stages of development. And that's tough no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, you mentioned Turkey as a problem country that they're bringing into the Union. And it's like it would be better if it were more prosperous and more settled before it was admitted.
Well, absolutely. Turkey has 72 million people, and that's a huge. That's almost as big, almost the same size as Germany. So that you think about that impact, and then Europe also has a lot more challenges around productivity than the United States economy does. They are way behind on the productivity scale, applying information and communication technologies, so they're not as competitive as the United States and likely to be outcompeted by countries like China and India in the future. So they've got a big challenge ahead on many, many dimensions.
All right. Watch out, Europe. China is on the way.
Yeah.
And Mary OHaraDevereaux is on the way back here next week for the final session of Bonus Conversations on the Coast. We're going to talk about uncertainties and wild cards. Don't miss it.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Follow us on Twitter at JimFosterCoc or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
Joining us again this week for Bonus Conversations on the Coast, Dr. Mary OHaraDevereaux. And we left that doctor out the first 2 weeks. We're going to make up for it. We're going to keep calling her doctor. Dr. OHaraDevereaux has written the book Navigating the Badlands, Thriving in the Decade of Radical Transformation, published by Josie Bass, which is a local publishing house.
Yeah, it is, right here, San Francisco.
A subset of Wiley now.
John Wiley bought them out.
Hey.
Great company.
Stay tuned for more publishing information. This book, according to Denise Morrison, who's the president of Global Sales and Chief Customer Officer for the Campbell Soup Company, you can't get more down home than that, says Navigating the Badlands provides a clear economic and social context for companies to understand and respond to the impact of global transformation on the consumer. Now, one of the things that you point out, just looking at 2005, is that there are some things that are terribly uncertain, and they're difficult to weigh and put into an understanding of the future. For example, one of the uncertainties that you talk about is President Bush's second term. How will it play out?
That's
and
right.
That's really, a toss-up, isn't it?
Well, it's hard to really know. He's going to be a lame duck president within the next year. That's always the downside of a second term, so you don't have much time. But he's trying to tackle some very big issues, of which there's a lot of uncertainty. One of those really is Social Security, and that's on everybody's mind, and it's a real conundrum to figure out. There's a more heat than light in discussions around it today. But it's a big issue.
Several years ago, there was a kind of nonpartisan commission which had people from both sides of the political aisle, and I think had some, scholars, and they came up with, I thought they came up with a plan for Social Security. What happened to that?
Well, they did, and they restructured it a little bit and made it work, and there's, Social Security long term, and we're talking about 2030, 2040.
Yeah,
if
like
we
your
kept,
book. Yeah.
If we kept running it the way we're running it today, we would have some problems. But there are some tweaks and shifts that can solve the problem fairly easily. One of them is raising the retirement age, which makes perfect sense since more and more
Sure.
people are living to be 100.
Absolutely.
People don't want to play golf for 40 years. So you're not really old anymore when you're 60. It's really the beginning of a second middle age.
Right.
We're not old anymore till we're in our 80s. So there'll be lots of things that change driven by that. But I think the uncertainty, whenever you're doing forecasting, there are always uncertainties and wild cards. And the uncertainty about Bush's second term is he's trying to take on a lot of big issues with very little time that he's not going to get much support on. So the real question is, what actually will come out of his second term? It's very unlikely in the next year or two that there is going to be a big shift in how we deal with Social Security, but it's possible he might get somewhere.
Okay. I feel better, I think.
Well, you should feel better. I don't think people should be very nervous today about Social Security. We do need to make some changes, but there are some relatively easy changes that we will make in the next 5 to 10 years that I think will make it work out
The
just fine.
one change that he's talking about scares the heck out of me, and that is the notion of investing some of your Social Security donations into the market, which sounds good when you look at the arithmetic, but it's terrifying when you realize that the transition costs of such a program is in the trillions.
Well, it's very expensive to do, and then remember we're in the Badlands. So there's tremendous amount of volatility in the stock market. There's going to be more to come. And so that the next 10 to 20 years isn't going to be the same in the stock market as it was the past 10 to 20 years. And that's what structural shifts are all about. So I think it's extremely risky to go down that route, and we don't need to go down that route to fix the Social Security system long run.
One of the things then, sitting down and thinking about the future that a predictor doesn't think about initially, what you might call wild cards. And we got a wonderful wild card thrown at us now, the Palestine and Israel, with a real possibility, it seems, of making peace.
Well, and it's wonderful. There is a window of opportunity with Arafat's death, but it's a small window on a very big problem. So never mistake a clear view for a short distance.
But one of the other encouraging things beyond his death, and that was terribly important, I think, is that they recently did have an election.
Yes.
And that election seemed to go well.
It did.
And I'm not familiar with, the character of the man that got elected, but at least
he's got a running shot. Lots of problems ahead. What they're focused on right now is a very small piece of the puzzle. So let's hope it's a positive step that we can build on, but there's lots of other things that need to be solved.
And let's hope that Dr. Mary OHaraDevereaux writes more books like Navigating the Badlands, Thriving in the Decade of Radical Transformation. Dr. OHaraDevereaux has been good enough to be with us on 3 sessions of bonus conversations on the coast.
Follow us on Twitter at Jim Foster COC, or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.